Perfect. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started. All right, so welcome to Field Day. So this is a special CyberGuide Live Chat because it's focused all around our cyber guides and what they do in a day in the life kind of in their field. So you're lucky because you're not going to get to hear me talking a bunch about science and things that I don't know as much about as our cyber guides do. So I'm going to introduce them in a short amount of time. But first, I wanted to clarify and make sure that everyone understands what a cyber guide is. I know that this could be your first time competing in eCYBERMISSION, and you may not know exactly what a cyber guide is, but a cyber guide is like a mentor for a student. So all of our cyber guides are STEM professionals. They either have military background or they have engineering, mathematics, technology, science backgrounds, and they're all really well established in their field, or some of them are finishing their doctorate. Some of them are still in school. Some of them work for the Army lab. We even have some that work for NASA. So they're all a wide variety of backgrounds. And they're going to support you through these live chats, able to answer questions with you. And they're also going to be utilized on our message board, which we'll go over after. But our message board is great. We actually have a small little event piloted right now called CyberGuide Profiles, and it's under STEM careers. And it has each of our cyber guides have answered a questionnaire that's been posted there, and it talks about a day in the life, what their tips are for students, and you actually have the ability to ask questions on your own time, and you can dialogue with these cyber guides through the message board. So it's a great system. It is replacing Kronos. If you were a participant last year, you may have used that. If not, don't even worry about it. But we'll talk about our message board again at the end, and I think it's a great way to also interact with our cyber guides if you don't have your question answered today, or you may have a question that you would want to ask a different cyber guide who has different experience. So with all that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So our first cyber guide up is the Alexis Marsh. Alexis, if you want to wave and introduce yourself really quickly.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alexis. I'm a third-year PhD student at Iowa State University, and I study bioinformatics and computational biology.
Oh, well, see, that's a mouthful. So that's awesome. So first, can you tell us a little bit about what being a research assistant looks like, and what are some of your duties in doing that?
Yeah, for sure. So my primary responsibilities are so you're assigned as a graduate research assistant, you're assigned a project to work on, and your goal is to forward that. So you have to obviously work on the research for that. You get to build kind of the knowledge base around that. So maybe you can look at what other people have done, do primary lit, and try to help support the project and build it out that way. You also get to work with other people in your research group and support their projects. So I have experience, some chemistry background, some biology experience. So I'm able to help students in my lab, or other students in my lab who are more computational, their background's more in like a computer science or something like that. So I could kind of help them a little bit there. Yeah, so that's kind of my primary responsibilities. Some labs, including mine, we have some collaborations with external to the university, groups external to the university, and support on those projects as well. So you get to work with a lot of people, you get to learn a lot of different things, and as you're building both your skills as well as advancing the goals of your lab and the exciting research that the group's working on.
Awesome. And for our students, can you explain exactly really what computational biology and bioinformatics is?
Definitely. So computational biology and bioinformatics is a field where you're working with computers to try to learn more about biology. And you can do that a couple of different ways. You can do that with like genome sequencing and using statistics to try to extract, oh, is this gene really important, or is it, kind of a little bit of a red herring. So you can work on that side with a lot of data and a lot of like high throughput sequencing where you're getting a lot of data really quickly and too much for like one person to look at. So you can have the computer help you with that. Computational biology, a little bit more where I focus, is more on modeling biological systems. So you want to know, if I give E. coli this food source, what products are they going to make? What is any of that usable for maybe like a biofuel scenario? And trying to help experimentalists, people that are working in a lab, and help guide what they want to look at. So if you can determine computationally this set of experiments wouldn't yield anything useful, the lab doesn't have to spend time and money exploring those avenues, and maybe you can direct them to something that has a higher probability of producing the desired result.
That's awesome. That was educational for me as well. So thank you for explaining that. So would you say that you mostly work as a team or alone or a little bit of both?
So as a graduate student, you get to do a little bit of both. So you have your whatever project you're working on for your dissertation, and a lot of that is on your own, because you need to develop your kind of research and your your dissertation project and kind of that. But you also have a lot of opportunities to work with other PhD students and build collaborative projects, which are very rewarding and can be really exciting, because you can have a lot of different perspectives come together and have the project be much more dynamic than just if one individual was working on it.
Awesome. So I know that, for one of the questions we asked previously was if you had any inspiration, and you listed Grace Hopper. That caused me to get on Google and look her up. And I thought that was a super cool experience for me too. So thank you for sharing. So have you always been, interested in the STEM field, or did, Grace really, catch your interest, or were you doing, science experiments when you were 4 years old out in the sidewalk?
Yeah, so I definitely have always been interested in science. I loved seeing how the world worked and how my initial interest was more in like environmental biology and kind of like looking at the outside world and how different things were working. And then as time went on, I got more interested into the computational side, the computer science, a little bit more into math. And then moving that way, I realized all of the really cool things that you can do with computers, and you can work with like computational biology. You can combine the two, and you can still be working with stuff that you see in the kind of more natural world, if you will, and then combine it with this really powerful resource we have in computing.
Awesome. And I'm going to ask you one last question, and then at the end, our students will get a chance to ask you something. But I've written down what you've said to students for advice. But if you want to paraphrase or just read it from the slide, you're welcome to. But just a little bit of advice for our cyber guides, either in their journey into the STEM field or just with their eCYBERMISSION projects.
So my advice for journeying into the STEM field is that it is a journey. You do encounter some roadblocks, but everybody does, and I think keeping that perspective is really useful. And once you get on the other side of those roadblocks, it's really rewarding to see what you have accomplished and what you have learned, and it's really great. And you just want to make sure you're having fun, and anything you learn is awesome. It doesn't matter if you feel like, oh, other people already knew this. Well, they had to start somewhere too. They had to start from a place of not knowing. So keeping your eyes on that and finding a field you're super passionate about. STEM has so many different aspects you can explore. So I'd say go for it, have fun, explore, and remember it can be challenging at times, but in the challenge comes a lot of reward and a lot of fun.
Thank you, Alexis. That was great. And like I said, we'll come back to you towards the end, but I always enjoy hearing you share. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to another cyber guide. And our next one is going to be Dr. Lasko. Is this an okay time for you? Are you ready?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. So Dr. Lasko has his camera off right now because he is, well, there he is. He appeared. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So first of all, tell me, what is a research geographer?
That is a great question, Rachel. Thank you for that. So geographers can be interdisciplinary. That's why I really like it. So we don't have a specific discipline. We all study any kind of phenomena with a spatial relationship. So it could be looking at population studies, looking at how cities grow or change, or it could be looking at environmental phenomena, which I focus on, which could be looking at forest cover loss or change or air pollution emissions from fires. It's a very interdisciplinary field, but we tend to use a lot of technology, things like geographic information systems, which are basically computerized maps that we can do analysis in. And we also use a lot of satellite imagery for our analysis.
Awesome. So I know that you work at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. How did that happen? Were you always, looking at working with the Army, or did a project that they were working on spark your interest?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually did not know about this specific Army Corps of Engineers organization that I worked with until second year of my PhD. I applied for something called the SMART Scholarship, which is put on by the Department of Defense and a nonprofit to give scholarships to master's or PhD students to then work at a government research lab. So I found them through that, and it ended up being a great fit because they do a lot of the work that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I think, and this is a great example how you can still work side by side with the Army and not be enlisted. So I know a lot of people didn't really know that that was an option to be a civilian employee. And I believe you are a civilian employee, correct?
Yes, I'm a civilian. I don't think I would make it into the military very well.
Listen, I wouldn't either. I would be on the third push-up and I'd be out. So I understand. But would you mind talking about some of the highlights of your career right now, or some, I know that your dissertation was on a really interesting thing about emissions impact in Vietnam. So if you want to talk about either of those, we'd welcome that.
Sure, yeah. So I started out, and my dissertation was very well disconnected from the work that is done at ERDIC, but we use a lot of similar technology. So in my dissertation, I focused on estimating the emissions from air pollution from fire in Vietnam specifically. So they have a problem where after the rice is harvested, that the majority of the leftover plant material is burned, and they all burn it at the same time. Mm-hmm. So then this leads to a lot of air pollution. So I use remote sensing, modeling, and I also use field work. So I spent a lot of time there. It was really quite interesting for me to be immersed in metal culture.
Yeah, that's awesome how your STEM work even took, across the globe, and that shows that you can really apply it locally or globally. So that's great. When working in the Army Corps, would you say that you're doing mostly team projects? Or are you working by yourself, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, it's definitely a combination of both. So what I generally do is, as a scientist several years post PhD, is that it's a combination of writing proposals. So coming up with ideas that address something from a funder that's interested in doing. So something that I recently proposed was wetland area mapping invasive species in wetlands, for example. And that is something that helps a lot of the use-based installations. But my point for that is I will work on writing proposals, or sometimes I'll work on writing papers, wrapping the aspects of it. In terms of team and team versus individual, it is certainly a combination. I'm actually a remote employee for my organization, and I live in Montana. And so yeah, I'm collaborating remotely with people, but it's also, I work in a team of about 2 typically. But for the most part, we do our work separately, and then we will meet up a couple times a week to discuss everything.
Awesome. I know that sometimes our students are doing that too. We encourage everyone to assign responsibilities and roles in the team and then kind of collaborate together. So I think that's a great crossover. And then I know I hear little puppies in the background, so that was exciting. And I know you must love nature if you ended up in Montana, because Montana is just beautiful. But I think that also shows that it can take you anywhere. Before I let you go, I know I've written down that you really encourage students finding a mentor, but do you have any other parting advice for our students, either in their eCYBERMISSION projects or just getting involved in the STEM field?
Sure, yeah, and I think it's great that all these students have an opportunity to pursue projects through the CyberMission. I think it's a nice opportunity I wish I had, and my advice generally would be that, of course, I mentioned finding a mentor, but I can say when I was in college and high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. It's very overwhelming, all the possibilities. And slowly through time, those get narrowed down. So it's, if you just pursue things that interest you, you find they don't interest you, that's great. That's another thing that you narrowed down. And that's something that eventually led me into my position. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I thought I wanted to be all kinds of things, but I ended up being a scientist because I found a professor in a class that was studying wildfires, and he offered me an internship because of my interest in the class, and not necessarily just because I was a good student. I was never a fantastic student, but the interest is also very key. So I think if you guys have strong interest in things, that goes a long way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think that's great advice. And if you're passionate about science, you're probably on this call right now in your evening, maybe eating your dinner. So I think that's a great sign that you're on your way to being successful in the STEM field. So thank you so much, Dr. Lasko. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Rachel, and thank you everyone for listening.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to move on to Dr. Tobias, who's right there. When I love this shirt, science is like magic, but real. It's so true, because sometimes when even if I see science experiments or even going to the moon, that's truly magical. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to you a little bit. And if you would just tell me what a principal researcher does and what does it look like at where you work?
Hi, everyone. You hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, where I work now, I've been at MITRE just for 6 months, and I was actually an Army civilian before, also for 5 years. And I worked in some companies before that. Where I work, principal researcher is just sort of a job title in the researcher series. So where we work, researchers, we basically use our STEM knowledge to help solve problems, mostly for federal government sponsors. And sometimes solving problems involves giving advice, writing reports. Sometimes it's going into the lab and getting some data to answer some questions. So it's a variety. And I like that about what I do these days.
Awesome.
Well,
Do you have any specific project that you've worked on in the past, I guess since you've started at MITRE Corporation, that has been specifically interesting for you to research, or nothing really standing
yeah,
out?
I can tell two things. Yeah, the main thing I work on is a bit hard to explain, but it's kind of like we're building an internet marketplace, a bit like a cross, if the kids know eBay and if they know LinkedIn.
Yeah.
A bit of like a cross between those two, but specialized in the biological engineering that I've done for most of my career. We're trying to build a network that can help people find other people to work together, or to do services for money for them, to give people more choice and to maybe have them save money and pay less by hiring smaller companies or individuals, even maybe graduate students like Alexis who might want to work on Saturdays or Sundays to get some extra money and use their skills. So we want to build this network to help people get their projects done, and we want them to be able to get their projects done even if their teammates or these providers or customers are all the way across the world. And we want the network to help them communicate really well and make everything really clear, so there's no questions about what is expected and what they're supposed to deliver and how much that's supposed to cost. And we're even looking to use the blockchain technology that's been in the news, not always for the best reasons, but we're looking to use the blockchain technology to be the underpinnings of that network.
Awesome. I really love that you just, with the way you explain that too, because it shows how many different ways you can go into STEM fields, how different every career can be in STEM. And I know that you specifically answered the STEM inspiration question in a great way, how it kind of changed a little bit. I paraphrased on here, but if you could just explain to them, the students again, how it evolved over time and what inspired you and what first got your interest in the STEM field, that would be great.
Yeah, I could trace it back to around 7th grade when I first started middle school, and I got kind of excited about math, and I was really lucky to have 2 great math teachers in our middle school who who actually got permission to throw out the textbook and teach it their own way. And we did a lot of math contests. They had us sign up for these math contests. And I grew up in Canada, and some of them were across Canada, and some of them were across North America. And I was a really competitive kid. I was really into sports, and I kind of just would get competitive at whatever, playing a board game with friends or my family, or getting good grades in school. So I really kind of got into the math contests and the difficult homework they would give us, and found that I was, if not the very best, one of the better ones in school, and found that if I worked hard, I could get results. And then so I started liking, my STEM subjects more or less through middle school and high school. And I decided I wanted to do engineering for college. Mostly because I wasn't sure that I wanted to do graduate school, and I wanted something where I could go to college after 4 years and then get a job if I wanted. I thought engineering was a good bet for that. And I wasn't even sure what kind of engineering, but I kind of, and I applied to some different engineerings at different colleges, but the one I ended up choosing, McGill, they didn't have some of these fancy engineering new kinds that some of the other schools had, but I decided that I like chemistry the most of my science classes, so I did chemical engineering, and not even really knowing that much about what chemical engineering is, because it's only a little bit chemistry. But then fun, kind of, and my competitiveness kind of stayed through college. So I worked pretty hard and got good grades, and kind of decided that I didn't feel like I was really done with my education after getting my degree. So contrary to what I thought going into college, I decided I did want to do graduate school, and I went right away. And I ended up going to California all the way from Canada for graduate school, which was a very good experience. And I ended up meeting my wife, who's from California, and I ended up working in a laboratory where my professor later on won the Nobel Prize. So that was pretty exciting to be part of a laboratory and doing work that we didn't really know it at the time. We all thought it was really cool, but we didn't really realize that it was like Nobel quality stuff that we were doing. But that was like, it's one of my career highlights as well. So yeah, I think your career can take all kinds of directions. I never would have guessed that growing up as a kid in Canada that I would be an U.S. Army civilian, one day, and have a U.S. government security clearance and stuff like that. So your career could take you all over. So I don't think you don't need to plan 30 years ahead. I think you just need to be following what you find exciting, what you're good at, be willing to try new things, and be open to opportunities, because you never know sometimes when these will come up. I mean, this job I have now, I just kind of decided that maybe it was time to move on, and I found this posting on LinkedIn, and it looked like it was written exactly for me, and I put in my resume, and I started talking to them on the phone, and I found out they were trying for 6 months to hire somebody, and they weren't able to. And very quickly I had an in-person interview and got a job offer a couple days later. So it was just sometimes, especially with networks, right? But kind of like the network we're looking to build with the internet, and with how fast information can travel and be searched and found. These kind of opportunities will come up sometimes where somebody needs someone that's almost exactly like you. And I can go on to the tip if you don't have.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think that when you're young, and I think it's if you think you like STEM or you like STEM, just try out different experiences to really get to know yourself. That's probably the most important job you have in middle school, is to learn about yourself and what you like and what you don't like, and those preferences and experiences will help you decide what excites you the most, and maybe what you should do later in college or for work, because the most important thing is to love what you're doing, and I said that if you love it, you'll work hard at it, and it won't even feel like you're working. And I'm feeling kind of like that way right now with my job, and I don't know if it's going to last forever, but I'm not watching the clock. I'm not really concerned with being the getting the highest score on my annual reviews or things like that. I'm enjoying it. I feel like we're moving forward, and I'm doing work that fits me well, and then, you know, that's the best way to be successful, rather than if you feel, you know, so many adults like go to work and hate their job, or just, you know, they do it just for the money to support their family, and I understand that, but like, if you have the chance for your job to be more than that, like, that's really a much better situation. Like, you know, I feel, you know, life's too short to like hate what you do for 40% of your time. You know, you're waking even more, you know, 40% of your time, even more of your waking hours. So when you're this age, like, look for something that you'll love, and you don't have to do the exact same thing, right? Things will change. And if you fall out of love with something, maybe you'll move into something else.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Tobias. So now I'm going to stop screen sharing because we have a fun little surprise. We have Dr. Garrett who's joined us. And I don't have a slide for him, but he's actually just going to answer some questions for you guys. And first, Dr. Garrett, if you are an Army civilian employee as well, right? As a research physicist, is that correct?
Correct. I'm a research scientist at the Army Research Lab. I've been there 20 years.
Oh, wow. So tell us exactly what kind of, your job description is there, or how you fell into working for the Army.
I started working at the Army Research Lab after I got my PhD in college. They had a job opening in optics, which was what I had studied in college. It wasn't exactly the same thing I was doing, but as you've heard from everybody else, you don't do the same thing all the time. You move on and try new things and you find out that you like them. And when you're working with other people that have the same interest in the things that you're interested in, it works out great. And so I got a job as what we call a postdoc. I believe Alexis will probably be a postdoc soon, hopefully. And
we're all rooting for her.
So that's someone who's straight out of grad school. So I had mentors and advisors that had projects lined up already for me studying. So I like to tell people that I shoot lasers at things. That's my job. But working for the Army, you think I'm like burning things or blowing them up, but no, that's not what we're doing. We're using the lasers to study the properties of different materials. When I started working there, what we wanted to do was, you know how you have your little red laser pointers and the material in there that gives you the red light. Well, we were studying different materials. We were trying to find a material that would give us ultraviolet light so that we could have a really small ultraviolet laser pointer. And this was important because you could use this light then to look for biological materials that were floating in the air, like say anthrax or other germs.
Wow.
And also you can use the light to like disinfect, maybe at your local REI or hiking store or something. You've seen these little things where you can put the little UV light in your canteen and it'll disinfect your water, and so the UV light will kill the bacteria in there for you. And so I started off so I had to build up a lab to do experiments. And then as time went by and I got more experience with things were going on, responsibilities fell to me then to start writing, like you heard about, writing proposals, coming up with your own ideas, writing proposals to get funding to work on other projects, studying other materials. And now I'm at a point where I myself am mentoring a team of people that are working in the lab that I built up. So they often have all sorts of questions about how I got these things working and stuff. And so I have a great time going back in the lab and showing everybody how the different experiments work for studying these materials.
That's awesome. I love that you related to, working with lasers on like a huge scale and then to as small as like, the technology in REI water bottles. That's super cool. And it shows how expansive that technology is. And it's amazing that you've really established yourself so well there that you can, teach a new generation of scientists that. And that's kind of what we're doing here is you're passing on some of your nuggets to our upcoming generation of scientists. So it sounds like there's a lot of teamwork, in the Army lab. Would you say that's fair, or would you say it's mostly, solo work?
No, it's very much a team project. We have specific mission goals that we're trying to accomplish. Right now, we're trying to make a detector that can measure the amount of this light that we're producing. And so we have people that are growing the material to make the detector out of. We have people whose job it is to process the material. So you get, like, you've seen the silicon wafers. So somebody has to grow the wafers for the detector. Somebody has to process them. Somebody has to test them, take them into the lab after they've been made into detectors, and then measure them with light. So everybody has their little jobs that they're kind of responsible for, but we're all working toward this bigger project. Get together every week, have our team meeting, talk about how we're doing, what we can do better to meet our mission goals.
That's awesome. Would you say that, I know that you've been at this job for, you said 20 years, right?
Correct.
Do you have any specific, moments that stand out that you're really proud of that come to mind? Or just in your career?
I mean, that's an embarrassing question, but we get
you toot your horn. You tell us how good you are.
No, so I mean, we have as all organizations do, you have awards and stuff to encourage and recognize people and stuff, and one of the awards I got was kind of for this kind of project that just kind of randomly happened, where I was like collaborating with another person that I had met, and the Army Research Lab is actually in 2 different places across the state of Maryland, rather far apart. But I was able to form this collaboration with a material scientist up at Aberdeen Proving Grounds. I work more down in southern Maryland area. If you get out your map and look where these places are, and he was working on nanoparticles, and he needed somebody to do some optical spectroscopy to study these little gold nanoparticles. And so I did the optical spectroscopy. We put together a pretty good paper, and we won the award that year for the best science project, so to say.
I love that. That's good. It's not embarrassing. I think that's something to be really proud of, especially with how hard y'all worked. So, but before I turn it over to our students for just some general questions, do you have any parting wisdom to them, either in getting involved in the STEM field as a career, or their education, or their eCYBERMISSION projects?
I mean, being here is a great step moving forward. I mean, lots of things other people were saying. Maybe I can reiterate some of that stuff. If this is something you're interested in, there are jobs out there, and there's nothing better than having a job doing something that you really like. And as you move forward, you're going to meet more and more people that have these same sort of interests. And that you should collect these people, make these connections, and to help you move forward. And kind of the one of the things I talked about in the questionnaire you sent out, and it's kind of related maybe to helping people with their cyber mission projects, is look out in your community for whatever your project is. If you're talking about recycling or something, is there a recycling center in your community where you can go talk to them about what they do with your trash and stuff? Find what we talk about here is, you need to find a subject matter expert and go talk to them about what you're working on. You'd be surprised. People love, like us here right now, people love to talk about the things they're working on, and they'll have a very, most people will have different and unique ideas about what they're doing. And I know the eCYBERMISSION is very community oriented. So going out and talking to people in your community about the sort of things you're working on, and relating it then to maybe specific things that are more important to your community than more of a general sense.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Garrett. That was great. It was really informative for myself as well as I'm sure the students. So at this time, I'm going to encourage our students to not be shy and to ask some questions. You can ask them generally to the 3 cyber guides we have on, or you can direct them to Dr. Tobias, Dr. Garrett, and Miss Alexis Marsh. I do believe that Dr. Lasko had to hop off, but if you're more comfortable, you can type it in the chat box, or you can, unmute yourself, or you can put your video on, whatever you're comfortable with. But I really encourage you guys to participate because these are some brilliant, brilliant people we have on. So I'm going to give a minute and stop talking and see. It can be about your projects. It can be about, getting involved in the STEM field, specific questions for, colleges or pathways, not necessarily colleges, but educational pathways. I love everyone is shy on these chats, but then, we don't want you guys to miss out on these questions. While you guys are thinking of questions, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the message board about those profiles we talked about. And please, if you come up with a question, drop it in the chat. And if not, I'll go back and give you guys another chance to ask some questions. So I'm going to share my screen again. And this is what the message board looks like for you guys. So if you see right here, the Ask a Cyber Guide, that is going to be where you can continue to interact with our cyber guides. All of our cyber guides that we're on today have already answered questions on the message board, but we also have, we have a bunch more who have different specialties and fields that they work in. So if someone today didn't necessarily work in the field that your project's on, you please still feel free to ask a question. So another cool thing that we're rolling out right now is if you click About STEM Careers, you know what? I got logged out. Give me 1 second, guys. So you'll see right here on the right-hand side, you'll click the message board. And then if you go to About STEM Careers, you can actually see we have Dr. Tobias's, Dr. Garrett's, and we have Alexis Marsh's CyberGuide profile on here. We also have 2 other that were not on this call, and we will continue to have more every Monday and Friday. So when you click them, you can see a great overview of everything that they do. It has their name, a brief description of job duties, what they studied in college, were they interested in STEM as a child, and then what's an inspiration and an advice for you guys. So it's great because you can reply and ask them specific questions about their field, or you can ask them a question about your project. If you don't necessarily want to ask a specific cyber guide about your question, I encourage you guys to go to the project help. You'll see some other students have also posted here already about their projects, and our cyber guides take the time and they respond on here. So we have, Alexis responded on here, Dr. Tobias responded on here. We have another doctor responded on here. So it's been great. So I really encourage you guys to utilize the message board like we talked about previously. This is replacing Kronos. If you didn't have Kronos, this is now what we need. So it looks like we have a couple questions in the chat box. So one of the questions, and any of our guides can answer that, is how are you guys, coming up, or do you have any encouragement on how students can come up with engineering projects if they're stuck and don't have a mission idea yet? Do you have any wisdom on that? Either one of you guys could go. I'll recap the question. So the question is essentially, how do you get ideas for your projects, or how would you recommend a student, finding an idea for a project?
For me, what I would say, and so the type of engineering, I primarily interact with the software engineering, and a lot of times how our project ideas come about is we are working, or in my case, I'm working with a tool and I'm looking and saying, well, this doesn't quite seem right. And in my field, the software engineering architecture isn't as robust as is, say, a product put out by Google. So we look at that and we say, okay, well, what is the system supposed to be doing? And then we can kind of test it that way. So that's for at least software engineering and software testing, we're looking at common tools or tools that we're directly interacting with, and we're trying to look there and say, okay, do we need to test this? Do we need to recommend a better infrastructure for how to build or how to expand these tools? And we kind of work that way.
Awesome. Did you, Dr. Tobias, Dr. Garrett, did you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've judged. I've been a virtual judge for eCYBERMISSION for I think I've done 5 years already. So I've seen like several hundred projects now, and I really enjoy judging for the engineering ones. I really enjoy when the students, they pick a problem like very local to their community, something that's dear to their heart, that they can observe, whether it's a dirty pond or maybe their school is generating a lot of trash and they want to do something to reduce like the lunchtime trash. And then I also, remember that, you guys are in middle school and you don't have a big budget and you don't really have that much time. So just try to keep your project, don't bite off more than you can chew. Like, keep it simple. And I remember, yeah, there's so many cool examples. I remember one was the students made one of those, like a wheelchair for a cat. Like some dogs or cats will get paralyzed and their hind legs won't work. And you can get from a veterinarian, you can get something like that, but they were, saying that those are expensive and not all cat owners might be able to afford the $300 or $400 that those cost. And so they had a goal of, could they make something that was almost as good for, $20? And they did a great engineering design project, and they went through a few design iterations. They started with sketches, and then they built a couple prototypes and actually put it on one of their cats. And,
I love that.
And evaluated how well the cat could move around. So yeah, keep it local, keep it simple. That would be my simple advice.
I love that, especially my cats like to do like acrobats and UFC fighting. So I think the wheelchair thing is definitely something I might need in the future. Dr. Garrett, did you have any advice for students trying to pick a project?
Yeah, I mean, having very large and grand goals, it's a good way to get excited about a project and start thinking about a project. Like Alex said, and what I mentioned earlier, I think one of the main parts and what I like to see in the mission folders is kind of relating it to your local community again. And I think that's actually one of the main things about the eCYBERMISSION is doing something with or in your local community. But then again, starting with a big grand project is a good way to get started. What makes it successful is maybe identifying one little small part of that you can try to do or try to test out. Maybe you have an idea for how to make something better if you just replaced one thing, or you make it tractable. You can still have the grand goal, but make the part that you're going to put in your mission folder and show the work that you actually did. It has to be something that can be something you can accomplish in the next 3 months.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We do have a deadline of, and that can be found on the eCYBERMISSION website under important dates. So that's great advice. You both kind of echoed each other, that don't bite off more than you can chew. And if you're still having a problem, selecting a topic, please look up our inspiration station in the Student Help Center. And that kind of encourages ways you can look into your community to try and identify a problem too. So I think that's all great advice. We also have,
along that lines, not asking what's a project I can do, but telling us you have this idea for a project. How can I make it something more something that would be better for an eCYBERMISSION folder? I think you'll get more feedback from the board if you come with a bigger idea and looking for help to make it something that can be done.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. That's good advice. And we actually have another question, and this one is focused on, it asks what were your favorite classes or memorable courses you took in high school, but I'm also going to push that to college just because I've been out of high school for over 10 years. So that's a little bit hard for me to remember, but if you guys have any in high school or college, although Alex was talking about how he remembered his math elementary school teacher, so maybe not. If you guys have memorable teachers or courses that you remember in high school or college, that's what we can share on.
Maybe the math was just because I liked it so much, but I mean, I want to maybe point out to the students and reiterate something that Alex was talking about. Like if there's a subject you enjoy and you feel the class is moving too slow for you, I'm sure the teacher were more than happy to find an extra or more advanced workbook for you to work out of. I remember this in math, that the math teacher just gave me a little book where I could go sit off in the corner and there were like these little tests, and so I would just try to get do as many tests as I could every math period.
Awesome. What about you, Alexis or Alex?
So I would say for me, I had quite a few that I really enjoyed. I had in college, I had to take a computer science class because I was a mathematics major, and I had done a little bit in high school, but not a lot. There wasn't, I just didn't do a lot. I was interested, but I thought I was going to go more into a bench career, so something more like a chemistry or biology, so I didn't spend as much time with it, but I took a class in college, and it was really, really an awesome experience, and I really learned a lot, and the professor was really engaging and great, and that really started my shift more towards a computational career. But yeah, I was fortunate that I had quite a few good classes and good teachers throughout my education, but that's definitely one that stands out.
Awesome. And Alex, do you want to talk about your teacher that threw the math book away?
Yeah, I could some more. There was two teachers
Lucky.
who represented, I don't remember if they were they probably weren't the entire math department. This was middle school, but they were, half of it. And one of them was a very experienced teacher who was, close to retirement. The other one was a much younger one, and they kind of redid the curriculum and got permission somehow from the school board to, like I said, we didn't use a textbook for middle school. They just made it super fun. They really emphasized like the fundamentals. Remember, we had to do in 7th grade, we had the first 5 or 10 minutes of every class was mental math, and mental math was a thing where the teacher would almost like an auctioneer rattle off like 6 times 3 divided by 2 plus 5 minus 7. Like, he would do like that with maybe 40 steps, and then everyone would raise their hand and could they get the number that that it was supposed to be in the end. And as we went on, more and more kids were getting it. And then another thing was I think it was like it was for basic proficiency, like I think going through addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I think it was something like the class had 5 minutes, and then they would, I think, maybe put up a slide with let's say 50 or 100 little problems. And the whole, like we had to get to a point where the whole class got like 50 out of 50 in order to move on to the next one. And so it's just like drill, it started out with drills like that, just to make sure everyone had the proficiency to do the next level when we start to get into algebra and then whatever.
Yeah, that's a great brain workout. I feel like that's
we also did something about famous mathematicians, and everyone got I think everyone you didn't just get assigned a mathematician, like you drew something out of a hat, but it wasn't even just you had to go research, like it gave you clues for who your mathematician was. And this is before Google, right? This is before internet. And so you actually had to go to the library or get resources to figure out, like, who this, the clues might say they were from ancient Egypt or ancient Iran, or, of course, ancient Greece had a lot. So you had to figure out who your mathematician was, and then you had to do a little report about their life and contribution. So yeah, I can still remember this stuff.
That's awesome. I think that's really impactful that you can remember it.
This was 1989 that I had that was a 7th grade.
That's awesome. I think some of our students will have the same experiences with whatever they're working on right now. So we do have one last question that we're going to go over. And this one is from a student, and it says, how do you suggest I reach out or find professionals or people in my community that know about or contribute to my eCYBERMISSION project or topic? So if you guys have any feedback on that, just trying to identify, maybe other STEM professionals, or I know, Dr. Garrett, you talked kind of about the trash question and something that you encourage people to find professionals. So if you guys have any advice on how to find people in the community to reach out to.
Well, I would hope your team advisor could help you with that, and parents are always a good step.
Yeah, we don't want you guys going out. Yeah, so sorry, go ahead.
So I guess my example was the trash, and I was thinking about this, like, well, maybe you can ask the trash man next time he goes by the house, do you guys really recycle this stuff, or do you? I have this same question when the janitors come through at my building and they pick up all the trash, because it seems like they just throw it all away in the same place. And so, how would you track that down, and who would know the answers for what goes where and if things are actually recycled? And
so start small.
Start small. And yeah, I mean, I would think your team advisor would be more than happy to help you identify people to talk with.
Absolutely. We don't want you guys going out into the community and just talking to strangers, but your team advisor is probably able to find some people that they're, in network with, who can point you in the right direction. If not, as long as your parent is there supervising, I think Google is a great tool just to find other companies or research projects in your area that you can speak with. And like always, if you have a specific question or you need a contribution to your project, please use our message board. A lot of our cyber guides are able to give really meaningful feedback to questions or projects. So you have access to a lot of really good STEM professionals. And if you looked at, our list of cyber guides, you'd see how wide their knowledge scope is, that we have people who work with the environment, with science, with computers, with, weaponry. We have pretty much everything. So hopefully with that answers your question. So we are going to conclude our CyberGuide Live Chat tonight. I want to thank all of our cyber guides for participating. You guys have been wonderful. I have learned a lot. I hope our students have too. If you guys joined late or if you missed any of this, we will have this recorded and posted to our YouTube channel. And like I said before, if you have any questions that didn't get answered, please use the message board, and I will make sure one of our cyber guides answers you. So our next CyberGuide Live Chat, I believe, is on January 10th at 8 o'clock Eastern, so the same time as it was tonight. And then we'll have an additional one in February. So we will have those chances for you to connect with our cyber guides, but also the message board throughout. So thank you guys, everyone, for a great CyberGuide Live Chat. And I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your week. Thanks, guys.